This is the Technician Commitment Podcast.
A podcast sharing stories, ideas and opportunities from the Technician Commitment community.
Driving change together.
I'm Charli Corcoran, Lead Animal Care Technician at the Institute of Aquaculture at the University of Stirling.
My name is Michael Bayliss. I am the Senior IT and AV Technician within the School of Histories, Languages and Cultures at the University of Liverpool.
This podcast is created by the sector for the sector.
Hello and welcome to today's episode. We're exploring an important topic for the future of technical workforce. How can we create a clearer, more visible and sustainable career pathway for technicians? Technical professionals play a vital role across higher education, supporting world-leading research, teaching, innovation and industry collaboration. However, navigating career development opportunities and progression routes has not always been straightforward.
Today we're looking at the Technical Careers Resource Hub, a resource designed to support technicians, leaders and institutions in understanding, developing and strengthening technical career pathways. We're delighted to be joined by two guests with a wealth of experience and insight in this area. Joining us is Sarah Allen, Technical Career Pathways Lead at the UK Institute for Technical Skills and Strategy, and Russell Wilson, Technician Strategic Lead at the University of Cambridge.
In this episode, we'll explore why technical career pathways matter, the challenges organisations face in developing them, and how Technical Career Resource Hub to help technicians and institutions create clearer routes for progression. So I would like to welcome Sarah and Russell to join us on today's podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning.
Thanks for having us.
And please, can you introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about your role within sort of your institution? Sarah, I'll start with you.
Yeah, perfect. Good morning. As Charli said, I'm the Career Pathways Lead for the UK Institute of Technical Skills and Strategy. And I think whenever I'm working with technical staff, I almost start off with an apology. I'm not a technician at all. My background really has been, first of all, in recruitment. And then for the last kind of 10-ish years, I worked as a careers advisor at a university and then moved to work with technicians through the Talent Project about 3 or 4 years ago, and now working with ITSS. So my background really is all about careers and development, progression, career pathways, and now obviously I'm working to use that experience with the technical community.
And you, Russell?
Yes, good morning. Hi folks, thanks for having me here. So my name is Russell Wilson. I'm the Technician Strategic Lead at the University of Cambridge, as Charli mentioned. So I'm now based within learning and organisational development within HR. But my background, I was a career technician. So I started my career as a trainee tech at 17 years old, straight out of school. And I was supported to complete my degree within sport and exercise science alongside working as a sport and exercise science tech. And so I've come through that sort of pathway and that journey. I spent 21 years, I would say, working within Scotland at Edinburgh Napier University and then to Heriot Watt, and they've both played a huge role in my development. But in my current role, I'm focusing on strengthening technical career pathways, workforce planning, and supporting the visibility of the technician community and the rollout of the Technician Commitment Action Plan here at the institution. Alongside some of that work, I'm also involved with the Science Council, where I'm co-chair of the Registration Authority, and through the IST, I work as an advisory member on their executive board. So yeah, lots of work alongside the CPAG, which we'll talk today.
Yeah, one of the things I really love is hearing about everyone's different career pathways and how such different backgrounds can kind of lead you towards similar things. And obviously, career development is a key priority at the moment across the technician community, with the Technician Commitment and ITSS. What barriers or challenges might still need addressing or looking at around these pathways and development opportunities?
Shall I go first, Russell, and then you can fill in the bits that I miss? Because obviously I'm, sort of came into this role as an outsider to technical services. But A few things, when I started working with this group of people, a few things really struck me as a kind of careers professional. And I think one of those was that often people can't see a career pathway. It doesn't feel clear to them how their career could develop. I think another thing that really struck me was that the technical community often feel unrecognised for the successes that they do have within the workplace. And, you know, sometimes I hear people say, oh, I don't teach, I'm not allowed to say I teach, that's something I'm not allowed to say. I can instruct, but I can't teach. So there seem to be kind of all these rules about what you could and couldn't say. And the other thing that I really found as a careers person was that often, and not everyone, of course, but often technicians don't feel they have anyone to talk to about their career. So everyone's working in hugely busy environments. They might feel that their manager doesn't have the time or wouldn't be interested in talking to them about their career. So often they feel that there's sort of a lack of clarity about which way they could go, and no one to kind of discuss that with them. So there's some of the sort of initial challenges that I was really struck by when I started working with this group of people.
I mean, just to follow up on that, I totally agree, Sarah. One of the things when thinking about this question, the technician commitment has done so much positive work around the four pillars, but I still feel that one of the biggest challenges is the visibility, and as you mentioned, the clarity, I think, is key. Although that there has been a huge amount achieved in the 9 years since the technician commitment came along, I think that there's significant challenges in larger institutions where the technical roles are more distributed across departments and they're structured in very different ways, which makes it quite hard to define the workforce consistently and individuals, as Sarah mentioned, to see that clear progression pathway. From some of the mapping work we did as part of the CPAG project, what stood out is that the data is often there, but isn't brought together in a way that gives us the full landscape and the full picture. And it makes it difficult to identify patterns across the organisation and really focus on where the effort is needed. And I suppose from that central learning and organisational development perspective, I like to see ourselves as being that mechanism or that vehicle that technicians can now reach out to within Cambridge for advice and support and help in that manner. But being able to bring the data and the insight from some of the CPAG work will help us inform decision making and build the evidence base that we need to move from that reactive thinking to a more structured approach. And ultimately, there's the big challenge which will always exist and we need to continue to push, which is the cultural element. And those career conversations and development planning haven't always been embedded in a technician's day-to-day practice. But I think we're starting to see the progress thanks to the ITSS and the tech's commitment. So we're moving in the right direction.
We know as technicians and as our listeners, we know the sector really struggles sort of to retain that technical talent because career progression, there's like a glass ceiling sometimes. Once you get to your top, where do you go? Do you go become do you become a line manager? Do you step into the academic world? Do you move job roles? Do you get somewhere, go into commercial or, so seeing that now there is an accessible place for everything to be brought into one instead of it being scattered everywhere for someone to access is really, really useful and really helpful to improve career progression. Just for our listeners, can we explain what CPAG stands for and how many institutions does CPAG itself support or have supported?
Yeah, of course. So when we were putting this group together, and it was part of our funding bid to Research England that we do something with a group of institutions to have some kind of intervention around career pathways. So CPAG is the Career Pathways Action Group. And when we were putting the group together, the word action was chosen really deliberately. This was a doing group. So we, spoke to lots of people who were definitely interested in finding out more. And everyone now has access to the resources and the information that we have as part of the group. But the group members were involved in doing some stuff and in then presenting and gathering that information so that the technical community could benefit from it. And that was a really key aspect. So when we initially thought about it, we presumed that we'd have, we'd maybe work with a group of 6 or 7 organisations to think about the interventions that we could have. But we had a massive response. So in the end, we actually worked with 27 institutions. And each of those had an HR, a human resources or a learning and development lead, plus a technical services lead. So we were really thinking about applications so people joined on an institutional rather than an individual level. And it was really for institutions who wanted to create some change at that kind of institutional or at least departmental level within their organisations.
I remember first seeing posts on LinkedIn about it, and I just remember thinking that is such an important piece of work with all these institutions involved. It's going to drive some real change across the whole country, not just, a few institutions. I remember seeing it and being pleased Edinburgh was involved because that's where I was at the time, but and also just thinking how important this is going to be.
It's been wonderful to have so many involved. Absolutely phenomenal. And I think it's real testament to the interest that there is in technical career pathways and how people are really keen to make things better. And also when we talk in a second about what's happened within the group, I think so much progress has been made, which basically has relied on the goodwill and the volunteering of the organisations involved.
I was just going to add that I think Sarah touches upon the real important part for me, which was having the technical involvement, but also the HR and LOD leads involved as well to join up that thinking. For me, it couldn't come along at a better time. I had just started in role at Cambridge, so it was obvious to me I'd love to define and map out the technical workforce at such a large siloed institution such as Cambridge. But for me, it's helping to identify those golden threads where that we can initiate some form of change, positive change that will reach out across the entire institution. But I think the real strength of the CPAG work is that it's created for technicians, by technicians for technicians, and it gives that guidance, but it's also flexible in recognising that each institution will have different structures, data, resources, and it's not the one size fixes all, but it's actually some tools that you can utilise and tailor to fit your own systems. And I suppose it also really just highlights the strength of the community. Something that never fails to amaze me when we meet up at technical conferences and events is just how sharing and giving the individuals are, and obviously there is that commonality of challenge that we face, and the willingness of each other to support one another. So yeah, it's a lovely group to work in.
And having, I agree with the HR importance of having HR involved as well, because it's quite easy for us all to sit around the table and talk about these things, but actually having that buy-in from HR right at the start gives a bit of weight to the outcomes as well. So.
Absolutely, Charlie. And I think when we talk to technical leaders about why something's been difficult to implement or why something hasn't gone ahead as they wanted it to, it's often because they didn't have the right stakeholders involved. And, so having those people who are, interested in technical services and making things better, but involved in different parts of a university or research institute has been really vital.
I was just going to say, it's great to see that 27 institutions could get that active HR input. And I think what it really does is strengthens the trust and the credibility of the work, because technicians can see that, well, this is valued by our central mechanisms. And if they're willing to support it, then there might be some action. As Sarah said, the focus is on action. And sometimes it feels as if these are sort of piecemeal initiatives, where actually this one, I genuinely believe, will have impact.
You mentioned impact there. How how is CPAC making that impact to addressing the gap? Because we know there's a gap. Technicians are struggling with sort of career development, career resources. Is there any toolkits? Are they free to access? Do we have to pay for things? Is there any case studies that have sort of given us examples of how this has happened? Sarah?
Well, the short answer to all of that is yes, and that's what we were trying to do. Perhaps if I talk more generally, and then Russ can talk about the couple of projects that he was involved with and sort of paint a bit more of a picture. But I think there were two central questions we were asking all the way through the projects. We ended up with 8 projects, so 27 institutions, completing 8 pieces of work. And they were around different themes around career development. So some of them were around individual career development for technical staff, so creating something that technical staff could use on their own. Some of them are more kind of talent management focused, so more for managers. Some of them are around career pathways. But there were 2 key questions. What's actually going to change within your institution? What change is happening? But then the other really key part was we don't just want this project to finish and then, what's happened to all of the information that we know. Part of it was that we've used the information that people have found out through working on the projects to create the resource hub that you just mentioned. And a really key kind of value, if you like, of the resource hub is that everything is free to access and free for the whole community. So it's open access on a website. And that was a really important value for me. I really felt that we wanted everybody who was interested to be able to access the information and the resources and to be able to use those in their own way. So I don't know, Russ, if you want to kind of talk about one of your projects and maybe talk about what's available on the website for people to use.
Absolutely. Excuse me. So we were involved in 2 projects. The first was, as I mentioned earlier, defining, mapping and understanding the technical workforce, and the second project was the succession planning resources. I think it's really important to highlight that the hub and the resources that are there are useful for technicians. It provides that kind of practical tools for supporting career development and helping them navigate progression more clearly. But it's also helpful for the technical managers, and we worked closely with some of our technical managers in the institution, particularly through the succession planning resources and skills matrixing, which will support structured conversations around the development and future capability and planning of the teams. I suppose the tools also work at organisational level as well, with mapping tools that allow us to take more of an evidence-based approach and helping move from reactive decisions to that informed long-term thinking that I mentioned earlier. But when I reflect more I'll pick on the succession planning in the first instance. We worked quite closely with the Department of Engineering, who had been already putting some of this work in place and looking at how can they look at those critical points of failure within their team. How can they ensure that they have a pipeline of talent coming through and really kind of have a structure and pathway in place, so that, as you mentioned earlier, it's easy to lose your technical talent and they move out with your department or with the institution. So how do we protect ourselves from that whilst also trying to address the building of a career pathway? And Thomas Glendy is the head of technical services at engineering, had been doing some of this work, and as we were developing some of the tool sets around capturing the important and critical skills that are needed within his department, he fed back into this work. And actually what it triggered was a conversation around how we can utilise engaging with T-levels as a mechanism to boost start apprenticeships again. They had been running previously within engineering but had stalled, and actually he took on some T-level students and have now restarted and relaunched their apprenticeship intake, which I think is vitally important, and focusing where their training and development is going to be to make sure there's no gaps analysis within their team.
I'm really pleased across several episodes now we've mentioned this key word, T-levels, and it's a brilliant initiative. Now we within sort of HSS within the university have brought in T-levels last year and this year, and we've found them to be such a breath of fresh air. Open your eyes up to how you're actually doing your job and how you can pass on the skills to the students. The feedback we've got from the college from previous students was the feedback's phenomenal. It's just like they didn't realise what technicians do or what the job actually entailed and how busy they were going to be. Or so T levels, I think you're bringing it up. We brought it up in previous episode. It's just another step in sort of improving that development for a technician if they want to step into management, because obviously they are line managing potentially these T level students, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 students at a time in career progression, but they don't know they're doing it because they're just doing it, aren't they?
I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. I previously hosted work experience students multiple times, and if I'd had, obviously I was based in Scotland previously, so didn't have access to hosting T-level students, but it feels like it's just the natural progression, and regionally we have a kind of a responsibility, and civic engagement policies at institutions will dictate that you should be taking part in these sort of initiatives, and I think it's critical for us to identify the next generation of technical talent. But I suppose the big thing for me that the CPAG work, the succession planning and the defining work has given me is the availability of data, and I, as a technician, I like to have data to make those decisions moving forward, so you can be evidence backed. And I think being able to present to senior leadership at the institution on evidence that's accurate and valid and has been gathered from the technical workforce is really, really important, and allows me to strategically plan. Because previously, I have to admit, coming into the institution, trying to access data was one of the most difficult challenges I had. So working alongside our technical managers, being able to open that up has been really useful and will be really helpful in making the longer term decisions.
That's amazing. So all this work. So sorry, did you say eight projects, Sarah?
Yeah, we had 8 projects running as a whole,
yeah.
And Russ was involved in a couple of them. We also had a project which focused on sort of individual career development for technical staff as well. So, for example, we did a couple of things as part of that project. We have created a video library of technical staff talking about their careers, in order to give people kind of ideas about where their career could go, or some advice, maybe to support people to think a bit more broadly about career options for them. And we also created a workbook to help technicians and technical staff, and technical managers to have career conversations with each other. And I think sometimes managers feel very under pressure because they think, oh no, my person's going to come in and ask me about careers. They want the next level up and I haven't got that. What am I going to do? There's no answer to that. So it's really introducing this idea that talking about careers is much broader than that. Just have a conversation with somebody about what they would like to do. And actually, I've seen examples of this work really well with T-levels, where a person that I was involved with actually did go and have a conversation with the manager and said, well, do you know what, in the future, I'd like to be a manager. I know that that's not going to happen immediately, but that's what I'd like to do in the future. And this organisation was thinking about having T-levels. So then they gave the person the opportunity to manage a young person coming in to do a placement. So just to dip a toe in the water. One, do I like management? Is this really for me? Let's try it out. But also, can I gain a little bit of experience that might help me in the future? So it's kind of trying to create opportunities for those career conversations that maybe don't feel like, oh, I've got to provide something for my member of staff. It's about the technician being proactive in their own career, but actually, who can I talk to that might be able to help me or might be able to offer me some advice?
No, I love that, because it can be so easy to feel like you've kind of cornered yourself into a role and there's nowhere to go from that corner. So having that resource to say, actually, take a step back, look at what you might want to do, look at what else is around there, because you never know. You might, be able to fit into these roles as well. So
yeah, exactly. Go on, Russ, sorry.
Sorry, Sarah. No, I was just going to say it's interesting that, I don't speak for all technicians, obviously, but speaking to technicians, I think they find it really valuable to have that narrative and that case study element. So, okay, this is what you're proposing and this is the toolkits, but here's an example of how it's actually worked in practice. And for me, I was frequently signposting to other institutions and the ITSS work, but to be able now to signpost to initiatives that have taken part within the institution, again, helps build that credibility and, I can actually see this working in our structures and mechanisms. Maybe I can now feel empowered to take this on as well. And actually it aligns with a lot of the work the university are doing from a kind of central perspective also. So it's just the timing of it is perfect, really.
Mm-hmm. And then all these projects and all these case studies and everything, you've brought these all together. I'm going to get this wrong now, hang on, to create the Technical Careers Resource Hub, which is on the UK ITSS website. I am looking at it right now, so I didn't get the name of it wrong. And it's amazing. You've got all these options. All the videos you were just talking about is on there. There's a Career Conversations workbook that you were talking about. And the question that I was going to ask is, who is this for? But I think we've answered that. It's for everybody that could possibly need to have these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. It's open to everyone. We have tried to theme the content. So some of it is for technical staff, some of it is geared towards technical managers. But if you're not a manager at the moment and you're seeing a resource and thinking, I would be really interested in finding out more about succession planning, then there's no wall or anything that stops you going into that resource. So we've tried to theme them to kind of make it more helpful so that people know where to go and how everything works. But absolutely everything is free for all technical staff to use. And also what we're hoping is that technical staff might then use it to maybe go and speak to senior leaders in the university about something, for example, and have a live resource there that they can actually talk them through and show them some of the case studies that other institutions are taking part in.
Such a useful thing to show what other people are doing, and kind of use that FOMO a little bit as well. It's important to FOMO. I think to fear that you're missing out because everyone else is doing this, and let's use these to drive things forward.
And I think as well, it removes that sort of barrier or that fear that a lot of this work, as Sarah said, was done with the goodwill of staff volunteering their time, with limited resource and with free and open to access tools. I mean, for our mapping exercise, we used Excel and some data and some very simple pivot tables. It wasn't a difficult process. It did take time. But what we now have throughout the defining and understanding the technical workforce group is a dashboard where I can delve into a specific department and then a specific technical team within that department and understand the demographic. I can report now into the Race Equality Charter and the EDI policies and strategies. If I wanted to find particular data on gradings within that team and what that structure looks like, I can access that now, and that's extremely powerful. And it was like I say, I would never have thought I could have taken on that project, and I suppose the CPAG work gave us that push and that accountability to deliver it across the line. Because again, being a technician, I always find that if I'm given a hard deadline, then it will get done. This would have been a nice to do project, and unfortunately that would mean it gets pushed into the long grass, and sometimes we drag our heels a little bit, whereas this then meant we got it across the line. And some of the networking and collaborations that we've done have now continued, and even though the project has come to an end, we're still meeting up frequently to discuss what our next challenge is and how we're going to be addressing that and how we can help one another. So that's great.
The other thing I wanted to add on as well is I think it's also a useful resource for people within universities who are working in the research culture area as well. Some of the projects in particular were really relevant to that area. So, for example, one of the groups conducted some research and really had to think about how technical staff could work more effectively with academic staff. And actually they got technicians involved in that project and also some academics as well. And the mapping project also has an interest for research culture. And we know that within those kind of research ecosystems, sometimes technical staff are a bit forgotten. And we're thinking about researchers and maybe early career academics. So it's really important that we try and get this whole community to think about the resources, which hopefully in turn will help them to think more about technical members of staff and how they work within that research community as well.
It's so fantastic. Now I'm deep diving. The technical careers resource reminds me. The resource hub reminds me so much of the interview we did with Simti, a previous interview, because it's basically you put on little mentoring interviews of how to progress. Basically, what Simti is all about, of how mentoring another technician from another institution, and you put on the resource hub, and it's fantastic. That resource is like a quick little video you can watch, or you can join in this little chat. It's free to look at, free to sign up to. It's just, I think it's a fantastic resource and a fantastic hub. How do you think, or what do you think, sorry, the hub will change for the sector? What's your long-term goal for the hub?
Gosh, that's a big question. And I think, of course, the hub is just part of long-term goals. There's lots of things that would really have a massive impact on technical staff. So one of the things that's happening in the community at the moment is that there are a handful of organisations that have been able to implement promotional pathways for technical staff. So obviously we know that Liverpool is one of those, Warwick and Manchester Met, and then there's a couple of other people that are almost there. And one of the resources was really designed specifically to help the organisations that are almost there. And, just in terms of engaging stakeholders, thinking about what's the cost benefit analysis, how do I write a business case, how do I support senior leaders? And I suppose in my view, it would be, that would be something that would massively impact the sector if organisations could get something like that over the line. The other thing, and I was talking to Russ about this earlier in the week, was something like the 10-day CPD initiative that researchers are normally entitled to under the Concordat, and sometimes technical staff are entitled to that and sometimes they're not. And we did a quick straw poll at the technician commitment meeting and found that about a third of institutions include their technical staff in that 10 days Concordat.
So only a third?
Yeah, I mean, that was a bit of a kind of thing, a show of hand, but yeah, a third. And imagine what would happen if actually all institutions could get agreement to offer to offer all technical staff 10 days. And so some of the resources around, that's why it's so important to understand, well, who do I need to speak to? How can I get that agreement? How can I make technical staff included? So I think there's some really key initiatives that would really support technical staff when they apply to go on training and development. But I'm sure Russ has got other thoughts as well.
I have to be honest here, I kind of align with your thinking there. I know Mike mentioned it earlier about hitting that glass ceiling and that being the stumbling block. For me, that happened in my career, and it was a case of waiting for somebody to retire or move on from that post to then move into the next role. And the biggest change at that point in my life was to network with people external to my institution. I had been completely institutionalized and focused on my one institution, and connecting with Technicians Commitment and Kelly Veer and what was a group called Techs Connect at the time, who were a community of technicians who mentored one another and supported one another, really helped me progress, I suppose, and take on the next steps. In terms of the CPAG work, where I see it having the most impact, listen, I talk to technicians daily, and the same question is, what are you going to do about career pathways and career development? That's the number one pressing question that I get asked every time. And I'm in a university that has approximately 1,400 technicians across 150 departments. So, I mean, where do you begin in trying to create a career pipeline? We have over, I think it's 750 job role profiles for those 1,400 technicians as well. So I need to that's the area that I want to start, is generic role profiling. But as Sarah's mentioned, that there's a toolkit and resources there that I can now use, and obviously I have links with those communities and individuals who have pathways in place. But I really believe that we need some of the larger institutions to take that step and make that jump, because I think if say your Cambridge, Oxford, UCLs manage to get this across the line, that will really drive larger sector change. And the problem is given the current financial landscape, that's even harder to get across at this moment. But I see it as an opportunity. Moving into HR, I now see challenges as opportunities, and it's a chance, I think, to pitch technicians as a solution. And actually, the efficiency savings that can be made and investing in your technical workforce longer term, that will be returned to you. And as Sarah said, developing those business cases is a key element of that. In regards to the access to training, we ourselves have just got across the line in the last couple of months a statement of expectations for technical staff, which includes 10 days of training and development time. But for me, the challenge there is and a lot of these institutions, I think, are in the same boat where it's a guideline. It's not a structured policy. It's not something that has real teeth. And how do we make sure that is happening in practice? And that, for me, is the next step of how we can ensure that is happening in practice and that technicians are empowered to have those conversations. But I haven't, I have to be honest, more broadly had an opportunity to delve into detail of the other resources and toolkits that are on the CPAG. But essentially, I now have a resource bank that I can access and start to work my way through, and then that is now going to be embedded into our ongoing strategy and technician commitment action plans, because it is the common challenge that all institutions are facing, and there's like I say, a responsibility that we all take this on. So I'm looking forward to working hard on all of them.
Sorry, I was just going to add one thing on. I loved Russ's comment there about, the L&D time is a guideline. And one observation I had, I've worked in sort of a learning and development and training space for quite a long time, and never have I worked with so many staff who get interrupted from training courses. And the lab is not always on fire. And I just think culturally, there's a difference. I know when I've worked, I can't imagine a time that somebody would say, actually, Sarah, sorry, you can't go on that training course that's been booked, or we're going to interrupt you. But it happens all the time to technical staff. And I think there's a some of that is practical reasons, but some of it is cultural reasons as well.
We just going off that point, breaking the fourth wall, I was actually interrupted during this interview with a phone call and someone knocking at my door to find out if I was busy. So breaking that fourth wall. We did mention technical career pathways and promotional pathways. Now, we know that a handful of universities now have started bringing out this research technical professional pathway, RTP, if people know the abbreviations. And I know the National Technician Development Centre, the NTDC. We do like our abbreviations, don't we?
We were just discussing this before we were recording. I was like, there's so many acronyms to understand.
They brought out an education technical pathway, promotional pathway, ETP, for those teaching technicians or those more non-research based technicians that may see now a progression in that career pathway.
Immediately, Mike, what comes to mind is you said non-research technicians. See, that's where I push our technicians and say, actually, no, you also can align to this, because you induct staff, you train academics, postdocs. If that isn't teaching and learning, then I don't know what is. I feel that all technicians teach, and I think the important thing to get across to them is that is your first mechanism for getting the recognition you deserve, I suppose. And we actually are working alongside the NTDC on that work. We're going to host a session where we gather those that have went through the Advanced HE Fellowship Scheme. So I don't think we have many, but I think we have 8 or 9 technicians that have been through it. We'll bring them together and try to get a kind of focus group that the NTDC will come along and present to, and we'll try and gather some thoughts and reflections on what a national policy around that should look like. And as you say, that when it comes to pathways, the RTP pathway is fantastic, but we have to have different strands to that. And I know that there's a lot of work, whether that be educational, your kind of research specialism, management and facility strands of further progression. And that's something that we're currently looking at, because I know technicians commonly say the same thing, which is, listen, we all know academics who have been fantastic PIs in a very niche area, and for their development they've went into head of department or senior leadership roles, when frankly that isn't what they're good at. They've not worked hard all their life to get into that position, and they may be, sadly, terrible leaders and managers, but they're fantastic researchers. And the same goes for technicians. It shouldn't be that you've worked there for 25 years, you're the longest serving tech, therefore you're going to get the leader or manager role. It should be that there's an opportunity for progression in the thing that you're particularly strong at, and that's what we're trying to work on.
I do love the advanced HE every technician, I'm sort of mentoring quite a lot of technicians at the university, every technician should apply for the advanced HE associate fellow, because they're demonstrating, they're laying out the labs. But a lot of technicians see themselves as, I'm an imposter, I'm just doing what my job is. And we've talked about the imposter syndrome so many times across the podcast with so many different people, even between ourselves when me and Charlie discuss it. You are doing your job, but your job can be recognised as an associate fellow, a senior fellow, because you are doing more than what you think you are doing.
The stumbling block always tends to be the assessment part, and then the feedback on top of that. But the amount of technicians that I know, one of my former colleagues and good friend Neil Guthrie, he's just been awarded senior fellowship, and it's fantastic to see that. More commonly now, when I first signed up for associate fellowship, that was a big barrier to overcome, and it felt like that was a large piece of work. Whereas now I'm frequently seeing fellows and senior fellows from the technical workforce. So we have overcome a significant barrier there, and I think that really will help drive change, because when you can align a pathway to certain recognition schemes, whether that's through chartered scientist or chartered engineer and then senior fellowship, it helps evidence the real depth of skill and expertise and knowledge that technicians have, and will help with the career pathway build, I believe.
I just wanted to add to that as well. Again, one of the sort of things I find crops up quite often when I've been working with technical staff is that sometimes, and obviously I don't want to generalise, but sometimes they're not very good at talking about all the stuff that they do and sort of recognising all the extra the things that they're up to, and that might be difficult then for applying for things like fellowship, because maybe people don't realise what the depth of the stuff that they're up to, and it also can be hard for like interviews and things like that, where maybe people are talking about transferable skills, and I find that a lot of technical staff are like, well, there's a problem, I just solve it and then get on with my life, and that's what happens. So so a lot of the work I do is trying to support technical staff to be able to think in a bit more depth about how they I suppose the contribution that they make to the workplace. And I remember having a conversation with somebody once about teaching, and I said, well, okay, just talk me through what you did yesterday, because she was saying, I'm not involved in teaching, I've been told I'm not involved in teaching. Talk me through, what did you do yesterday? And every single thing that she talked about was either supporting learning or actually teaching small groups and slightly larger groups. And it just kind of blew my mind at that point. And I think we need to also create some ways to give technical staff that confidence to be able to talk about more than their specialism, because actually the contribution they're making to the workforce is huge. And actually, I think if they could do that a bit better way, it would make recognition much easier.
I think sometimes it's so hard to see things that you do every day as skills. It's just something that you do every day. Yeah, it's just something that you get up, you do it, you go home, and that was it. But someone else has no idea how to do that, sees that as the hardest thing that they could do. So yeah, it is really difficult to look back at what you've done and think, actually, that is something that I'm good at and I can do it, and it should be celebrated. So yeah.
And as you say, Charlie, though, that reflective process really does help you then plan for the future as well, because once you've put that down to paper, you realise how much you've achieved, what you have done, and it helps you then think, well, where are the potential gaps? And I think the key thing for me, and I really wanted to nail this point across, was just the fact that when you join up that thinking between how your work impacts on the wider strategies at your institution, so you know the difference that you're making to the student learning and can evidence that impact. I feel that's where again, Sarah said not wanted to generalise, technicians aren't particularly great at gathering the impact of their work. And it's so easy to collect because it's so visible and obvious. But if we can move to feeding into wider university policies and showing that how we are aligning agendas, and again, part of the solution to some of the challenges that institutions are facing, that's when the recognition and the visibility really increases, because most institutions will state how valued the technical workforce are. But if we can, again, back to that data element, if we can prove that with metrics and numbers, then I think that's where the real active change and approach to the career pathways can happen.
And the career pathway action group's been so valuable for getting that data, as you were saying. So.
Charli touched on it, and Russ touched on it as well. Reflecting is the key point within sort of career progression and guidance. Always reflecting on what you've done. That's one of the key things for associate fellow and a fellowship. You have to reflect on your work. You have to get peer observations on how you develop your skills within teaching or within learning. And if you self-reflect and self-criticize, which I think a lot of technicians do, they're very self-critical on their own work and how they've done something. I know me and Charli have had these conversations about ranting with each other about our own work and what we've done wrong in the day or something's gone wrong. But that is somewhat a self-reflection of we need to be better. But we're always pushing to be better. As technicians, I think that is your we go back to imposter syndrome. We always want to be better. Always want to better ourselves. I know I do anyway within sort of my career. But the career development sort of resource hub is there to help you better yourself. And we need that to drive technicians and people who need to drive forward. That hub is there to hopefully improve how you develop yourselves. What was the moment during the project that made you think this is making the difference?
For me, it was clear that the 8 strands, I had examples of specific challenges within the university where I could see this was a problem. So I want to bring out a kind of a university strategic plan for how we address some of the key challenges, but the problem being that every department having very unique set of challenges. For me, I now have a resource bank in which I can use that as a starting tool, open up discussions, look at how we can tailor and amend and roll out some of these tools. And as Sarah mentioned earlier, it's all about that action. So I'd encourage people to kind of approach it with a specific challenge in mind, try out the tools, and then, like I say, adapt them to their own context. I think the key thing with it being free and designed to be practical makes it a really fantastic resource. And at this point, I just need to make sure I recognise and thank Sarah and Ed and the wider ITSS team for all their help and support with this, because it's been a fantastic piece of work, and bringing people together and driving real progress across the sector. So thank you, Sarah.
Oh, thanks, Russ. I think there's been a few points. Whenever you start something new like this, you're never quite sure how it's going to land. It was a really key part of it that the stuff is written by technical staff for technical staff, and the projects were all about that. I think the key moments really for me are happening now, where we're getting emails from institutions who haven't been involved saying, I think this is great. There's a lot of interest about it. And so we're getting sort of some feedback now that we've launched to the wider community. Just people talking about how useful they think it is, and great that it's open to everybody. I think for me as well, another key point, and we ended up, as I said, working with 27 institutions, and whenever you start working with that number of people, part of me did think some of this is going to lose some energy partway through. What happens if a couple of the projects don't quite get to the end? How are we all going to feel about that? But actually, the energy and the commitment from all of those 27 organisations has just been phenomenal. We held a sort of get-together in March this year to finish off some work, but also to kind of share what we'd got to first of all. And there was a little part of me that I'm thinking, will people come? These partners have been involved in this for over a year now. They've all got other priorities. This is a tiny part of their day jobs. And so actually to get everybody in a room together, sharing the information and also networking with each other and working together was really valuable as well. So for me, it's been about just the energy that this has created, and energy that sort of kept going right until the end of the project.
I muted myself, sorry. There's a lot of background noise. It's raining really heavily here. So it's like, I'll just press mute while that's happening, and then forgot. No, I want to echo the thank you, Russell, but also to you and to everyone that's been involved, all 27 institutions, the HR partners and technical specialists, because this is a huge amount of work that's going to help so many people and improve the career prospects for so many people, and just make it a bit easier for technicians to feel like they've got things that they can be doing to push their own careers forward and to help their colleagues. So yeah, huge thank you for everybody involved. We've been talking for almost an hour. It's been an amazing conversation. It's been so interesting. And let's see if we can wrap it up with our last kind of question about how people can explore the hub, share it with others. What do they need to know to get started?
Literally just the website address, which you can, I'm sure you can share in your podcast notes. So literally log on, have an explore, have a think about which ones are most interesting to you and which ones are most relevant for your organisation. It might not be that everything is right for you at this time, but just go on and have an explore. It won't take you very long to have a look through, and you'll really quickly get an idea of what's on there. And I would also really encourage people to think about, if you think the content is good and relevant, which we really hope you will, then think about how you might be able to disseminate that content within your own institutions as well. So is there a technician day where perhaps somebody could share the information, and we're really happy to get involved in that kind of activity? Is there a blog you could write to make sure that people are knowing about it? Can you share it with your team? Because as with all of these things, there's a lot of people who know about it, but there's probably even more who haven't seen it or haven't heard about it yet. So I would really encourage people to talk about it with their teams as well.
And I guess I want to add to that, the UK ITSS have a newsletter you can sign, or an email list you can sign up for. And if you were signed up to that, you would have got an email about this as well. So then go on their website and sign up to that, and you'll not miss anything, which has been great, because it's been nice to not miss things. So it's been good.
Speaking from a purely institutional point of view, that comms is a real challenge here within Cambridge. So we have things like our technical conference that's coming up, and we'll be pushing the CPAG website quite strongly and trying to highlight some of the work that's already been carried out. As Sarah says, the website's really intuitive, user-friendly and accessible. So it's just quite nice to click through, and I suppose what I hope people come away from it is feeling empowered and able to lead some of this work, and if not able, then able to contact and signpost the relevant people to start a conversation. But it's all very practical in its nature, and designed to be user-friendly. So yeah, hopefully everybody will enjoy it. And as Sarah mentioned as well, is that impact, if there's feedback, and if anybody would like to contact me, or I'm sure others in the team have said the same, they'd be willing to have conversations about how they would go about maybe rolling out those projects. If now we have those insights and experiences, what would we do differently? Now that's in some of the content anyway, but if anybody would like a conversation, I'd be more than happy to have that.
Amazing. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. This has been so interesting. Really, really great conversation.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Technician Commitment podcast. To learn more about the Technician Commitment, or if you're interested in joining, please visit the Technician Commitment website, which we will link in the description of this podcast. To make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to the Technician Commitment Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.